Good morning. Today's a beautiful day in London. I'm so excited. Today we're going to Stratford-upon-Avon, which is where William Shakespeare grew up, so we're going to get to see his grave and his wife's house. We decided we didn't want to take the tube all the way out to Stratford-upon-Avon, so instead we hired a charter bus, and our first stop was the Anne Hathaway cottage, which is this house. Now, we no longer have Shakespeare's childhood home. It was torn down a very long time ago. However, Shakespeare ended up courting and marrying the neighbor girl, Anne Hathaway, and her family home has been preserved, although it looks very differently now than it did in Shakespeare's time. The second floor was added, as well as everything past that last window that you saw and 3 chimneys. So this house looks very different from the house Shakespeare knew. Honestly, the family well is pretty much the only thing that hasn't changed. The gardens are still there though, and they're very beautiful. My friends and I got to walk around in them for a little bit, and it was just so fun and enjoyable. So I'm at the Anne Hathaway cottage, and the weather is just really interesting right now. Take a look. So if you look over here to the right, it is an absolutely gorgeous day. However, if you turn around and look to the left, it looks like there's a storm coming in. Yeah, welcome to England. Now, this house was lived in by Anne Hathaway's last living relative until the late 1800s, so places in the house like the parlor are set up to look like the 1800s still, kind of in her memory and her honor because she started the Shakespeare tourism. However, certain rooms of the house are set up to look more like it would in Shakespeare's day, and also Shakespeare supposedly sat in this chair while he was courting Anne, and this bed was supposedly given to Shakespeare and Anne after their marriage. After seeing the Anne Hathaway cottage, my friends and I walked around Stratford-upon-Avon for a little bit and started looking for a place to get lunch. Honestly, this was just the cutest little town. It really had an English old town feel. I felt very safe and it was very lovely. We ended up getting lunch at kind of a traditional English place where I got chips, a meat pie, and mushy peas. I've been reading Agatha Christie since I was little, and this was a dream meal. Afterwards, we had enough time to swing by the house where Susanna and John, that's Shakespeare's daughter and son-in-law, lived, before we headed over to the Holy Trinity Church where Shakespeare is buried. Being buried in this church is a sign of status, and this was only possible because of the money that Shakespeare had acquired in his later days before his death. This is the room that Shakespeare is actually buried in. It is very beautiful and very ornate. This is also the church that Shakespeare was christened in, and he was christened at this font, which now ironically is only a few feet away from his final resting place. This is the grave of William Shakespeare, which is engraved with a couple lines of poetry he himself wrote, daring anyone to disturb his bones. Now, several family members are buried beside him, including Anne Hathaway, his wife, as well as his son-in-law, John Hall, and their oldest child, Susanna. There's also this bust above his grave. Shakespeare himself commissioned it, and the quill is changed every year by the head boy of the school that Shakespeare attended. This bust was also whitewashed at one point. We're not sure exactly why, but it has now been restored to its original colors. Now, in addition to Susanna, Shakespeare had 2 other children, twins, Judith and Hamnet. Not Hamlet, Hamnet. Now, Hamnet died whenever he was 11 years old, and at that point, Shakespeare did not have the money to bury him inside the church. So it's believed that he was buried in the graveyard, this graveyard, outside. Now, for unknown reasons, Judith is actually not buried with the rest of the family. It's just Anne, Susanna, and John. that are next to Shakespeare, so people believe that Judith actually chose to be buried outside next to Hamnet. Hey guys, so we're coming back from Stratford and we are 4 miles from our exit and there's been a wreck and we're stuck in a giant traffic jam. And we might be here for up to 3 hours.
Hey!
So that's nice. We don't have any food or water.